The night I left for college was supposed to be one of the biggest moments of my life. A fresh start, a new beginning, the kind of milestone every child dreams about. I thought my parents would miss me, maybe even cry a little as I pulled my suitcase out the front door. But as the taxi rolled away from our house, I caught a glimpse through the window. My mother closing the curtains quickly, my father turning away almost too fast, like they didn't want me to see something. At the time, I brushed it off as nerves or stress from the long process of getting me ready for school. But deep down, something felt wrong, as if the goodbye they gave me wasn't sad or emotional, but strange. Like they were relieved. Like they were finally free. College life hit me fast. Orientation, roommates, the buzz of a new city, the excitement of independence. I was so distracted that I didn't immediately notice my parents weren't calling or texting to check in. Not a single, "How's it going?" or "Did you settle in fine?" Days passed, then a week, and I started to feel the silence. I told myself they were just giving me space, letting me grow. But a small, uneasy feeling kept circling in my mind. My parents had always been distant, but never completely absent. Something felt off. Something felt like it was being hidden from me. It wasn't until I opened Instagram late one night that everything inside me shifted. I was scrolling mindlessly when a picture stopped me cold. It was my parents, my strict, quiet, always tense parents, standing in a fancy restaurant I had never been to, both of them smiling wider than I had ever seen in my entire life. My mother was raising a glass of wine, my father's arm around her shoulder. And the caption written by one of their friends was even stranger. "What a beautiful celebration dinner. Cheers to new beginnings and freedom at last." Freedom? New beginnings? Celebration? My heart dropped. Celebration for what? I zoomed into the photo, staring at their faces. They looked happy. Too happy. The same parents who barely smiled in family pictures, who argued in whispers behind closed doors, who acted like raising me was a responsibility they had accepted but never enjoyed. Those parents were glowing like they had just won the lottery. For a moment, I convinced myself I was overthinking. Maybe it was an anniversary, maybe a work promotion, maybe a friend's dinner. But as I scrolled further, a video clip autoplayed. My chest tightened when I heard my mother's voice, clear as day, laughing in a way she never laughed around me. She lifted her glass again and said, "To never seeing her again." My father clinked his glass with hers and repeated, "Never seeing her again." The entire table cheered. My own pulse started pounding in my ears. Her. They were talking about me. They were celebrating me leaving. They were toasting to the idea of never having to see me again. I replayed the video so many times my fingers went numb. The words didn't change. The laughter didn't change. The joy on their faces didn't fade. Everything I had ever believed about my family began to twist into something darker, something I wasn't prepared to face. Memories started flashing in my mind, moments I had brushed off before. My mother telling me she couldn't wait for me to grow up. My father constantly reminding me college was the best decision for everyone. Their long silence when the acceptance letter came. The way they didn't even ask which dorm I was staying in. The way they avoided emotional goodbyes. It all connected in one painful snap. I wasn't a daughter they were sad to lose. I was a burden they couldn't wait to remove. For the first time in my life, I felt truly alone. The kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being in a new place or knowing no one around you, but from realizing the people who raised you were happier without you. I stared at the ceiling that night in my dorm room, unable to sleep, unable to breathe normally. Every word from that video echoed inside me. Freedom at last, celebration dinner, never seeing her again. I tried to understand why. I was never a bad child. I never caused trouble, never brought chaos into the house. If anything, I worked harder than everyone else to keep the peace. Yet the celebration felt like they had been waiting years for that moment. The next morning, I woke up with a strange mix of pain and determination swirling inside me. I wanted answers. I needed to know why they felt this way. But every time I picked up my phone to call them, my hands shook. What if they confirmed it? What if the truth hurt more than the silence? And what if there was something bigger behind this that I didn't know? Something they had been hiding all my life? I kept watching the video, analyzing every detail, the table full of friends, the expensive restaurant, the way my parents kept glancing at each other like they were relieved a secret had finally been lifted. That was the part that bothered me the most. They weren't just happy I was gone. They looked released. Like my presence had been holding them back from something important, something personal, something they never dared pursue while I lived under their roof. Was there someone else involved? A secret relationship? A family problem? A hidden truth about me or about them? My mind spiraled with possibilities. I started replaying childhood moments, trying to find clues, anything that hinted at the way they truly felt. And the more I looked back, the more things made sense in ways I didn't like. The skipped birthdays. The rushed holidays. The lack of affection. The way they spoke to me like I was temporary. But then something even stranger happened. As I kept digging through social media, I found another picture posted by someone I didn't recognize. It was taken that same night from a different angle. In that picture, sitting right next to my parents, was a woman I had never seen before. She looked comfortable with them, smiling like she belonged at that table more than I ever did. And the caption under that photo was even more confusing. Here's to a new chapter for all three of you. Three of who? Three? I stared at the picture again, counting carefully, my mother, my father, and the mystery woman. Something inside me hardened. Whatever was going on, this wasn't just about them being relieved I left for college. This was deeper. This was planned. And I had a feeling that the moment I discovered who that woman was, everything about my past, and everything about my future, would change. And that is exactly where my story begins. The next morning, the sunlight coming through my dorm window felt harsher than usual, almost like it was forcing me to wake up and face something I wasn't ready for. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my phone, still open on the picture of my parents sitting beside that unknown woman. I zoomed in again, trying to analyze every tiny detail, her smile, her posture, the way she leaned slightly toward my mother as if they were close. My mother didn't even lean toward me like that. The woman had a calmness about her, a kind of comfort that didn't belong in a celebration dinner meant for my leaving. It felt like she had been part of their lives for a long time, maybe longer than I had ever realized. All day, I felt unfocused, drifting through my classes like I was watching someone else live my life. My professors talked, my classmates laughed, college buzzed around me, and all I could think about was that dinner. Every time I blinked, I saw the moment my mother raised her glass and said, "To never seeing her again." That sentence lived inside my head, replaying louder each time. How long had they been waiting to say those words? What did they mean by freedom at last? And who was this woman who fit so comfortably in their celebration? Later that afternoon, my roommate Mia noticed something was off. She sat beside me on my bed, gently nudging my arm. "You've barely said a word since this morning," she said. "What's going on?" I hesitated. I wasn't ready to tell anyone the full truth. It felt too embarrassing, too painful to say out loud that my parents were happier without me. So I just shrugged and said, "Family stuff. Complicated." She nodded like she understood, but her eyes had a softness that made me feel seen in a way my own family never had. "If you ever need to talk, I'm here. Family drama hits different when you're far from home." Her words comforted me, but they didn't fix the storm inside me. Later that night, when the room was quiet, I pulled my laptop closer and opened the picture again. I decided to click on the profile of the person who uploaded it. Her name was Sarah, someone I'd never heard of before. Her page was filled with photos of parties, events, and gatherings. She seemed like the type of person who loved documenting everything, which, for once in my life, worked in my favor. I scrolled through her posts from that night. There were more photos of the same table, more smiles, more laughter. In one picture, the mystery woman had her hand on my father's arm in a way that made my stomach twist. It wasn't romantic, but it was familiar, comfortably familiar, like she had known him for years. Another photo showed her hugging my mom, both of them laughing like old friends. But then I came across a caption that made my heart stop. It was under a group photo. "This dinner felt long overdue. So glad the truth is finally out and everyone can breathe again." The truth? Breathe again? What truth needed to come out the night I left for college? And why did it make them all feel relieved? I kept scrolling, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to ignore all of this, pretend I hadn't seen it. But curiosity and hurt kept pulling me deeper. I clicked on the mystery woman's profile next. It was private. No posts, no details, just a picture of her smiling politely. Her name was Marianne. A name that meant nothing to me, yet somehow felt sewn into my parents' life without my knowledge. Who was she? How did she know them? Why was she celebrating with them on the day I left? As I sat there trying to piece everything together, I realized something strange. My parents were never social people. They rarely went out, never invited friends over, never attended big gatherings. Growing up, our house was always quiet, almost too quiet. Hearing laughter from them was rare. Seeing them smile in photos felt foreign. It was like the version of them in those restaurant pictures belonged to a different world. A world I wasn't part of. And maybe I never had been. When I was younger, I used to think I brought tension into the house without meaning to. Whenever I entered a room, conversations would stop. Whenever I asked questions, they'd give short, clipped answers. They rarely hugged me or said they were proud. They provided what I needed but never more than that. I thought that was normal, that maybe they were just strict or emotionally reserved. But now, seeing them so open, so relaxed, so happy the moment I was gone made it clear the problem wasn't their personalities. The problem was me. Or at least that's what I thought, until another memory surfaced. The night before my acceptance letter arrived, I remembered hearing my parents arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were low, but the tension in the air was sharp. "She deserves to know eventually," my mother had said. "Not yet," my father replied. "One step at a time." I remembered standing silently in the hallway, too afraid to ask what they were talking about. Back then, I assumed it was about money or school. But what if it wasn't? What if it was about this, whatever they had been hiding all these years? A new worry formed deep in my chest. What if the truth they were celebrating wasn't that I was gone, but something about who I was? As that thought dug deeper into me, another message notification popped up on my phone. It was from my aunt, my father's sister. She rarely contacted me, so the timing felt unsettling. Her message was short but strange. "Call me when you can. There's something you need to know." My stomach flipped. Why now? Why today? Why right after I found those posts? I typed a reply asking if everything was okay, but she simply responded, "Just call." I couldn't bring myself to dial the number. Not yet. I needed more pieces of the puzzle before I walked into a conversation I couldn't undo. That night, lying in my dorm bed with my thoughts running wild, I realized something important. People don't toast to never seeing her again, unless there is a reason, either a painful one or a secret one. And if there was a secret involved, it meant my entire childhood might not be what I thought it was. The next morning, I woke up early and walked across campus trying to clear my head. But the more I tried to ignore the feelings inside me, the heavier they became. Every step made me feel like I was walking towards something I couldn't escape. Something that had been following me my entire life without me noticing. I finally decided to reach out to someone. Not my parents, not my aunt, but my neighbor from back home, Mrs. K. She had known me since I was little, always smiling warmly whenever she saw me. If anyone had quietly observed my family without being involved, it was her. I opened our old chat and typed a message asking how she was doing. She replied almost instantly, happy to hear from me. After a few harmless messages, I gently asked her if everything was okay back home, if my parents seemed different, if she knew anything about the woman named Marianne. Her typing bubble appeared, then disappeared. Appeared, then disappeared again. She was taking too long to respond, and I could feel my heartbeat in my throat. When her message finally came through, it wasn't what I expected. She wrote, "Oh, you found out. I wasn't sure when you would. I think it's time you knew the whole story. But I can't be the one to tell you." The whole story? Found out what? My hands trembled as I typed back, asking what she meant. But she didn't answer. Not right away. She left me hanging there, drowning in confusion. And somehow, in that empty silence, I knew the truth, whatever it was bigger than just a dinner, bigger than a celebration, bigger than a woman sitting beside my parents. It was something that had been silently shaping my entire life. Something that was about to come crashing into my world, whether I was ready or not. The next few days felt like I was walking through a fog. Every little thing reminded me of that dinner, of the laughter, the clinking glasses, the words, never seeing her again. I tried to focus on college, on classes and assignments, but the tension in my chest refused to let me. I found myself replaying the photos over and over, trying to pick up any clue I had missed. Every smile, every tilt of the head, every glance between my parents and Marianne seemed loaded with hidden meaning. I felt like an outsider looking in on a world I wasn't meant to understand. I began to notice little inconsistencies from back home, things I had brushed off before. Small comments from neighbors when I was younger, fleeting glances, whispered conversations I happened to overhear. I remembered a few times my parents had been unusually secretive, taking calls in the other room or stepping outside to talk to someone I didn't recognize. Back then, I didn't think much of it. Now, it all felt like pieces of a puzzle I didn't know existed. That afternoon, curiosity overpowered my fear. I decided to dig deeper into Marianne's social media. Even though her profile was mostly private, I managed to find a few tagged posts, some of which included my parents. There were subtle interactions, photos where she seemed almost like family, and in some, my parents looked like they were deferring to her, laughing at things that weren't funny to anyone else. The feeling of being replaced was sharp and almost suffocating. I realized that Marianne wasn't just a friend, they shared a connection I had never been a part of. And it hurt more than I could have imagined. My roommate Mia noticed my distraction and asked again if I was okay. I wanted to tell her everything, The videos, the photos, the strange messages, but I didn't know how to put it into words without sounding insane. Instead, I just said, family stuff. Complicated. She didn't push, but I could see the concern in her eyes. Later that night, I tried calling my aunt again, but there was no answer. My mind started racing with questions. What did she mean when she said she couldn't tell me the story? Why was she the only one hesitant? Was there a secret about my parents I had never known? Was Marianne even part of that secret? Unable to sit still, I decided to retrace some of my memories, trying to make sense of the gaps. I remembered the first time I met Marianne, or at least I thought I had. I didn't recognize her as a central figure in my life, but suddenly flashes came back. Family gatherings where she was there in the background, visits to friends' houses, brief phone calls that my parents had taken and hushed quickly when I approached. At the time, I assumed she was just a distant relative or a family friend. Now it all seemed deliberate. I started keeping a small journal, writing down every detail I could remember about my parents' behavior and the little inconsistencies I'd noticed over the years. The more I wrote, the more I realized that the situation wasn't just about a dinner. It was about hidden dynamics, secret relationships, and a part of my life I had been completely excluded from. I felt like I had grown up in a shadow of someone else's story. Then one evening, a notification popped up from my aunt. I had almost given up hope, but there it was. We need to talk. I can't write it all here. Call me tonight. Please. My heart pounded. Tonight? That same night, I remembered my dorm had a small event for students to meet local alumni. I wanted to go, but everything in me screamed to stay in my room, to finally get some answers. I sat on my bed, staring at the phone, knowing this call might change everything. Finally, I dialed her number. Her voice was quiet, almost strained, when she answered. I didn't want to scare you, she said. But there are things your parents have hidden. Things you deserve to know before it's too late. My stomach dropped. Too late? I whispered. What do you mean? There was silence on the other end, heavy and deliberate. You need to understand this, she said slowly. Marianne, she's more involved in your parents' lives than you realize. And the reason they celebrated your leaving isn't just because they were relieved. There's history here. Secrets that stretch back years. I wanted to ask, to push, but something in her voice made me pause. She wasn't speaking to scare me, she was speaking to protect me. Or maybe to prepare me. I can't tell you everything over the phone, she added. It's not safe. You need to be careful about who you trust. And you need to pay attention to what's around you at home. Some truths are dangerous. Dangerous. The word echoed in my mind. I had imagined all sorts of explanations. My parents being selfish, their emotional distance, Marianne being some friend or relative I had never met. But dangerous? That changed everything. Suddenly, the story wasn't just about feeling unwanted. It was about a family hiding something potentially threatening, something I could stumble into if I wasn't careful. As I hung up, I felt a cold clarity settle over me. I needed to know the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how painful. But I also had to be careful. Every move I made, every message I sent, every question I asked could tip off someone who didn't want me to find out. The next day, I started piecing together what little information I had. I reached out to a neighbor I trusted, Mrs. K, who had always been kind to me. She didn't reveal much immediately, but she confirmed one thing. My parents had been keeping a significant secret. Something about Marianne and their past, something that explained the unusual relief on the night of my departure. I felt like I was walking a tightrope. Every new piece of information brought more questions than answers. Why had they never told me about Marianne? What had my aunt meant by too late? And most importantly, why had they celebrated my leaving as if it was a relief, as if my presence had been a problem they were finally free of? Late that night, I returned to Marianne's photos online, trying to find any clue, any connection that could explain her place in my parents' lives. One particular photo caught my attention. A family gathering from a few years ago where Marianne was seated between my parents, smiling warmly, while I sat on the other side of the room, unnoticed. That smile, that comfort, it wasn't new. She had always been there, quietly occupying a space I never knew existed. I realized then that I was only scratching the surface. My parents' celebration dinner, their words, the secret woman in the photos, the cryptic warnings from my aunt, it was all part of a larger story I had been excluded from. A story that could rewrite everything I thought I knew about my family, my childhood, and even myself. And I knew one thing for certain, I was going to uncover it. But the deeper I dug, the more dangerous it seemed to become. Every memory, every photo, every whispered conversation pointed to a truth my parents didn't want me to see. And the realization settled in like ice in my veins. The more I searched, the closer I got to discovering something that could change my life forever, and not necessarily for the better. I felt the tension building with every passing day, every message, every memory. The questions multiplied, the stakes rose, and the unease became almost unbearable. I was no longer just a college student navigating new experiences. I was a detective in my own life, piecing together clues about the people who raised me and the mysterious woman who had somehow inserted herself into my family in ways I couldn't yet understand. And the hardest part? I had no idea who to trust. Every text, every post, every conversation felt like a potential trap. One wrong step, one assumption, and I could push the wrong person to reveal or hide something crucial. My parents, my aunt, Marianne, every one of them held pieces of a puzzle that I couldn't see fully. And the closer I got to understanding, the more the danger loomed over me. This wasn't just about feeling unwanted anymore. This was about secrets, about betrayal, and about a hidden side of my family that might have been carefully planned long before I even realized it existed. And I had no choice but to uncover it, no matter the cost. I thought I had seen the worst of it, that the truth was buried in my parents' relief and Marianne's presence. But that night, as I scrolled through old posts and tried to trace any hidden connections, I found something that made my stomach drop. A photo posted years ago by someone I barely recognized. It showed a younger version of my parents with a girl who looked exactly like me, but not me. Her eyes, her smile, even her posture mirrored mine perfectly. And next to her was Marianne, smiling proudly as if she had been part of this family dynamic from the very start. My hands shook. I stared at the screen, unable to process what I was seeing. It couldn't be possible. Could there have been another girl? Someone my age, growing up under my parents' care, someone I had no memory of? Was this another child? Or was it some twisted way of showing me what my parents wanted me to be, a comparison they had never shared? The thought made my chest tighten and my heart race. Then a notification popped up from my aunt. You need to go home. Tonight. Bring nothing with you. Don't tell anyone. I froze. The urgency in her message made my skin crawl. Why now? Why this sudden demand? What could possibly be waiting for me at home that was urgent enough to pull me back in the middle of the night? And why the secrecy? I debated calling her back for answers, but something told me not to. She had been cryptic for a reason. She wasn't ready to tell me everything over the phone. Whatever I was about to uncover, she wanted me to see it firsthand. The problem was, going home meant stepping back into the house of secrets, the same house where my parents had toasted to never seeing me again. By the time I arrived at the taxi stand, my mind was racing. I kept picturing that other girl in the old photo, Marianne laughing at the dinner table, my parents' faces glowing with a happiness I had never seen before. The images blurred together in my mind, forming a scenario I couldn't untangle. The taxi driver kept glancing at me in the rearview mirror as if he could see my panic. I clenched my fists, trying to push down the fear, the questions, the growing sense that something far bigger than me was waiting at home. When I finally reached my neighborhood, the streets were quiet, eerily quiet. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement. I couldn't tell if it was the darkness or my imagination, but everything felt sharper, more intense. And then I saw the house, my house, but the windows glowed with light from inside. Not the warm light I remembered, but something cold, almost clinical. And through the partially closed curtains I could see shadows moving. My heart pounded. I wanted to turn back, call someone, anything, but I knew I had to see it. I had to know. I walked up to the front door and noticed the lock was slightly ajar. My parents weren't home, at least I hoped they weren't. But the tension in the air told me I wasn't walking into an empty house. Something, or someone, was waiting. Inside, the house smelled unfamiliar. There was a scent of flowers mixed with something metallic. My eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, and I noticed movement in the hallway. Marianne appeared first, calm and poised as if she had been expecting me. But she wasn't alone. Another figure stepped out from the shadows, a girl with features so strikingly similar to mine it felt like staring into a mirror. My legs went weak. You? Who are you? I whispered, my voice trembling. The girl tilted her head and smiled. I've been waiting for you, she said softly. The words were innocent, but the tone sent chills down my spine. We need to talk. All of us. At that moment, Marianne's calm demeanor vanished just slightly. She looked nervous, almost defensive. It's time she knows everything, she said, her eyes flicking toward my parents' old room, the one I had shared with memories of growing up, now ominously silent. Questions flooded my mind faster than I could process. Who was this girl? How did she know about me? Why had Marianne been here all these years, if not just as a family friend? And what exactly was it that my parents had hidden, something big enough to have its own consequences, something that could explain why they celebrated my leaving with such relief. The sense of danger I had felt before surged like a tidal wave. This wasn't just about secrets anymore. This was about a hidden life, a truth my parents had built carefully around me, a story that had been kept from me on purpose. And now I was standing in the middle of it, at the edge of discovering a truth that could change everything I thought I knew about my family and myself. Marianne stepped closer. "You think you know your parents," she said softly, "but you only know what they wanted you to see. The rest has been hidden for your own safety. Until now." Her words made my stomach churn. Safety? What kind of secret required a celebration of my absence to protect me? What had they been shielding me from? And why bring me here now to face it? The girl who looked like me spoke again, her voice calm but with an intensity that made me shiver. "It's time. You need to understand the truth. Not just about your parents but about who you really are." I stepped back, confusion and fear mingling in a storm inside me. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary, the place of my childhood, of routine, of everything familiar, now felt like a stage for a revelation I wasn't prepared for. My parents' celebration, Marianne's presence, the cryptic messages from my aunt, they were all pieces of a puzzle I hadn't even realized existed. And now, staring at this girl who mirrored me perfectly, I had the unsettling feeling that once this puzzle was complete, nothing would ever feel normal again. And that's when I realized, the truth waiting inside this house wasn't just going to change my understanding of my parents, it was going to change my understanding of myself. I took a deep breath, knowing I had no choice but to step further into the shadows of the house. The next moments would reveal secrets that had been kept for years, and I had a feeling that nothing, not even my own identity, would survive the revelations intact. But what I didn't know, and what made my heart pound with terror, was that some truths were meant to be locked away, and the closer I got, the more I risked uncovering something my family had fought to hide forever. I stood frozen in the dim light of the hallway, my pulse racing as I stared at the girl who looked like me. Every instinct told me to run, to escape the house, to forget I had ever seen her. But something deeper, something I couldn't name, pulled me in. She moved slowly toward me, her eyes calm but intense, studying my every reaction as if she already knew my fears. "I'm not here to hurt you," she said softly. Her voice had a strange familiarity, like an echo of my own, but deeper, more certain. "You need to understand that everything your parents did, the way they raised you, the way they treated you, it was to protect you from what happened before." I shook my head, unable to comprehend. "Protect me? From what? From them? From you? From what?" My voice cracked, and the tension in my chest made it hard to breathe. She looked down, almost ashamed. "From the truth about your family, about us." Me? My mind spun. My parents' celebration dinner, Marianne's presence, the cryptic warnings from my aunt, the girl who mirrored me perfectly, it all came crashing together in a way that was impossible to untangle. I felt like I had been living in a carefully constructed illusion, one designed to keep me blind to a reality I wasn't ready for. Then Marianne stepped closer, her expression serious now, almost anxious. "You need to see things from our side," she said. "It's complicated, and yes, it looks cruel, but everything was planned to keep you safe. To give you a chance at a life without knowing the danger your parents feared." Danger. That word cut deeper than any insult, any betrayal. For years, I thought the problem was my parents' indifference, their relief when I left for college. But now I realized the danger might not have been emotional, it could have been real, something tangible, something that could change the course of my life if I got too close. I stepped back, trying to find words, trying to find sense in the chaos. "Safe? You're saying all of this, my life, my childhood, my parents' celebration, it was for my safety?" Marianne nodded, but there was a hesitation in her eyes, a small flicker of fear. "Yes, but it's not simple. Your parents, they did what they thought was necessary. They made choices you'll have to understand, and someone from before, has been waiting, watching. That's why your leaving triggered them." Before I could respond, the girl who looked like me spoke again. "You need to know what happened the night I was taken from this family." Her words froze me in place. The night your parents had to make a choice. Every memory of my childhood flickered through my mind, the quiet dinners, the whispered arguments, the distance between my parents and me. Suddenly, the pieces of my life felt different. The celebration dinner, Marianne's calm presence, my parents' relief at my departure. They weren't signs of dislike or neglect. They were the result of a past I hadn't known, a decision that shaped everything. I felt a surge of questions. "Taken? What are you talking about? Who are you?" She smiled faintly, almost sadly. I am what you could have been, what your life could have been if things had been different. Your parents had to make a choice, and that choice left a hole in their hearts, one they tried to fill in ways you didn't notice. My mind spun. Was she saying there was another version of me? Another child? And Marianne, was she part of that past too, the link between the life that could have been and the life I had? Marianne sighed, glancing toward the stairs leading to the upper floor. Your aunt and I warned you not to come unprepared. The answers you're looking for aren't simple, and they might be dangerous. There are things in this house, things your parents left behind, that even now could put you at risk if you aren't careful. A chill ran down my spine. Danger. Secrets. A parallel life I had never known. Every question I asked seemed to lead to another layer of mystery, another piece of a puzzle I wasn't equipped to solve. And yet I couldn't turn away. I had to know the truth, no matter how terrifying it might be. Suddenly, the sound of a door creaking made me freeze. Someone was coming. My parents. Or maybe someone else. The girl who looked like me grabbed my arm gently. Be calm, she whispered. They're not ready for you to react yet. We have to go slowly. I nodded, though my heart was hammering in my chest. Every step forward felt like walking through a minefield. Every glance, every shadow, every movement in the room seemed loaded with danger. And in the back of my mind, the memory of that toast, their laughter, their relief, their words, echoed louder than ever, to never seeing her again. The tension in the house was palpable now, almost suffocating. It wasn't just about betrayal or secrets. It was about a life built on choices made to protect, decisions that had left holes and shadows, and a truth so complicated that I wasn't sure I could handle it. Marianne guided me toward the old living room, where the furniture looked untouched, almost frozen in time. Your parents left clues for you, she said. Things they hoped you'd find eventually, things that would lead you here. But they never expected it to happen this quickly. I noticed small items, photos tucked in corners, letters stacked neatly on a shelf. Each one seemed normal at first glance, but I realized they weren't random. They were pieces of a story, fragments of a truth my parents had hidden. My chest tightened with every detail I uncovered. Every image, every note, every memory made the reality more complex, more dangerous, and more heartbreaking. The girl who looked like me finally spoke, her voice steady but urgent. You need to understand that your parents' celebration, the dinner, everything, it was a distraction. It gave you a chance to leave safely, to start your life, while we stayed behind to deal with what could have been disastrous. I couldn't process the words fully. Disaster? Distraction? The stakes suddenly felt higher than I had imagined. I realized that what my parents had hidden wasn't just a secret about themselves, it was a secret that could change everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, and even who I was supposed to be. As I stared at the letters and photos, my mind raced with possibilities. Was the danger still here? Was it waiting for me? And what would happen if I discovered the full truth? I took a deep breath, knowing one thing for certain. The story wasn't over. And whatever lay ahead, there was no turning back. Every secret, every lie, every twist was pushing me toward a truth that would shake the foundation of everything I thought I knew about my parents, Marianne, and the girl who mirrored me in every way. And deep down, I knew the next revelation would change my life forever. Just as I thought I was beginning to understand the pieces of this twisted puzzle, something happened that made my blood run cold. A sudden sound came from the upstairs hallway, a soft creak, almost like a footstep, but there was no one there when I glanced toward the stairs. Marianne froze, her calm mask slipping for a split second, and the girl who looked like me tensed, her eyes scanning the shadows. That's not them, Marianne whispered, her voice barely audible. It's something else. Something else? My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I had imagined danger before, thought the house itself was a labyrinth of secrets, but now the reality was starting to sink in. My parents' hidden past wasn't just complicated, it was dangerous, and it was still active. Whoever or whatever had been involved before wasn't gone. They had been waiting, watching, and the celebration dinner wasn't just about relief. It was a distraction. A misdirection. And now I was back inside the center of it. The girl who mirrored me stepped closer. You don't know the half of it, she said, her voice low and urgent. There's someone from the past, someone your parents thought they had contained, someone who resents what they did. That's why your leaving for college was timed perfectly. They wanted to protect you from being a target. I staggered back, disbelief and fear clashing inside me. A target? From who? From what? Marianne's expression was grim. From a part of their lives they never told you about. From a family secret they hoped would never resurface. And now, it's resurfacing. That's why your aunt contacted you. She knows something is about to happen. I realized in that moment that the danger wasn't just historical. It wasn't buried in old photos or letters. It was alive, and it was closer than I had thought. My parents' celebration dinner, the cryptic messages from my aunt, Marianne's careful guidance, all of it was part of a web of protection. And I had just walked straight into the center of it. Then, a new sound made me jump, a notification on my phone. It was a message from an unknown number: "You shouldn't have come back. Stay away from the house or you'll regret it." My hands shook as I stared at the screen. Someone knew I was here. Someone knew I had uncovered part of the truth. And that someone was threatening me directly. Marianne glanced at the phone and her lips tightened. "They've been waiting for you," she said. "We need to move fast before they figure out you've returned." They thought they could control the situation, but now everything is at risk. The girl who looked like me stepped forward, urgency in her eyes. "Your parents made choices to protect you, yes, but they couldn't account for this. Whoever's behind it knows what happened in the past, and now that you're back, they'll do whatever it takes to finish what they started." A shiver ran down my spine. I thought I had been uncovering secrets about my parents' celebration and Marianne's role in their lives, but now the story had escalated into something far more dangerous, something that could reach me here, tonight. Every memory of childhood, every trace of the past I had ignored, suddenly took on a new, threatening weight. I looked at the girl who mirrored me and asked, my voice trembling, "Who is this? Who is after me?" She hesitated, then said, "Someone who believes the past was stolen from them. Someone who thinks your parents' choices destroyed what should have been theirs. And now, they want answers. They want retribution." I sank onto the couch, trying to process everything. The celebration dinner, Marianne's calm but tense demeanor, my aunt's warnings, it all made sense in a terrifying way. My life had been shaped not just by hidden family secrets but by a past conflict I hadn't known existed, a conflict that was now bleeding into the present. Suddenly, the lights flickered, casting the room into near darkness for a brief moment. I could feel the house shifting, almost alive with tension. Marianne grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the back of the living room, toward a small hidden door I had never noticed before. "We need to move," she said urgently. "There's a safe place in the house where they won't find you immediately. But we have very little time." As we slipped through the doorway, I realized the full scope of the danger. This wasn't just about hidden family secrets anymore. It wasn't just about understanding my parents' strange celebration or the girl who looked like me. Whoever had resurfaced from the past wasn't just going to watch. They were coming for me. And the longer I stayed, the more likely it was that the truth would hurt me in ways I couldn't even imagine. I glanced at Marianne and the other girl, feeling a mix of fear, confusion, and determination. I had uncovered fragments of my family's history, secrets that explained their odd behavior, and the reason for my parents' relief when I left. But now the stakes had escalated. The truth was no longer just about understanding my parents, it was about surviving the consequences of a past that had never truly disappeared. And I knew deep down that whatever waited for me in the shadows of this house, it wasn't done yet. The next revelation, the next confrontation could change everything about my life, and there might be no turning back once it happened. We moved quickly through the narrow hidden corridor, the old wooden floor creaking under our weight. Every shadow seemed alive, stretching across the walls as if the house itself were aware of my return. My chest pounded in my ears, a mix of fear and anticipation. Marianne and the girl who mirrored me, who I now learned was named Lila, kept glancing over their shoulders, eyes sharp, alert for anyone following us. When we finally reached a small concealed room behind the living room's bookcase, Marianne locked the door behind us. The room was cramped but safe, and for the first time since I arrived I could catch my breath. Lila turned to me, her expression serious. "It's time you knew everything," she said. "Not just about that dinner or Marianne's presence, but why your parents were so desperate to see you leave." I nodded, my throat dry. "I'm ready," I said, though part of me still didn't believe it. Ready for what? I didn't know. Lila took a deep breath. "Years ago, before you were born, there was a threat, something dangerous that targeted our family. Someone who believed they had a claim over your parents, over the life they had built. They would have hurt anyone in the family to get it. Your parents had to make a choice, protect the child who would grow up in safety, or risk everything by being honest." Marianne added, her voice low and steady, "Your parents celebrated your leaving because it meant you were safe. The toast, the relief, it wasn't hatred toward you. It was relief that you could be shielded from a past danger you couldn't have understood." I blinked, trying to process. My parents' smiles, their laughter, the clinking of glasses, everything that had haunted me, wasn't cruel or indifferent. It was protective, a heavy, impossible kind of love wrapped in secrecy. Lila's voice broke the silence. But that's not the full story. The danger wasn't gone. And now it has returned. It's why your aunt called you tonight. It's why Marianne is here. The past isn't finished with us yet. Before I could respond, a noise upstairs made us freeze, the unmistakable sound of someone entering the house. Footsteps, deliberate, slow. Marianne whispered, "They found us sooner than expected." I realized with a sinking feeling that this was the moment of reckoning. The threat from the past was real and it was here. I felt every memory, every fear, every question converge into a single point of tension. The door creaked open and my parents appeared, their faces a mixture of relief, fear, and something I hadn't seen in years, determination. "You shouldn't have come back," my father said, his voice shaking slightly. "But now that you're here, you need to understand the truth." Marianne and Lila stepped forward. "We don't have much time," Marianne said. "They're watching from outside, there's no telling what they'll do." My mother finally spoke, her voice soft but firm. "You've seen the celebration. You've seen what it looked like to the outside world. But it wasn't about hating you. It was about keeping you safe. That's all we ever wanted." Then Lila revealed something that made my stomach drop. "The girl in the old photo, the one who looked like you? That was me before I was taken by the same threat your parents feared. They had to protect both of us. You were kept away from the truth for your safety, and I was hidden until it was safe for us to reconnect." I staggered back, my mind spinning. So Lila wasn't just a mirror of me, she was a survivor of the same danger. Our lives had been intertwined from the start, separated by choices made in the shadows to protect us both. The past, the danger, Marianne's presence, all of it was part of a plan to keep us alive. Suddenly, a loud crash upstairs shattered the moment. Someone, or something, was breaking in. Marianne grabbed my hand. "We need to move. Now." We ran through the house, my parents following closely. Every room felt like a trap, every shadow a potential threat. But as we reached the back exit, I saw it, a figure silhouetted against the streetlight, watching, waiting. The person stepped forward and I saw their face for the first time, someone I had never expected. Someone connected to the danger my parents had tried to shield me from all my life. The revelation hit me like a punch. The threat wasn't gone. It had been waiting, observing, and it knew I had returned. My father stepped forward, shielding me instinctively. "This ends tonight," he said. His voice had a weight I had never heard before. Authority, courage, desperation. In the chaos, Lila whispered to me, "No matter what happens, remember, we survived the past. We can survive this." The figure hesitated, then vanished into the shadows, leaving a tense silence. Marianne breathed heavily and my parents finally lowered their arms. We were safe, for now, but the danger hadn't disappeared. The truth was out, but the consequences of uncovering it were far from over. As I looked around at my parents, Marianne and Lila, I realized something profound. My life, my family, our past, it was all far more complex than I had ever imagined. The celebration dinner, the secrets, the relief, it had all been a cover for survival, for protection, for lives built in the shadows. And just when I thought the story had reached its climax, Lila turned to me with a hesitant expression. "There's one more thing. Something your parents don't know you've found. Something that could change everything we thought was safe." My heart skipped a beat. Another twist, another revelation. I realized then that even the climax of this story wasn't the end. The secrets, the danger, the past, they were still alive, still moving, and still threatening to unravel everything I had ever known. I looked at my parents, then at Marianne and Lila, and understood the truth. Some stories don't end neatly. They continue to unfold, even when you think the danger is behind you, and even when the truth is finally revealed. And in that moment, I knew my life had changed forever, and the next chapter, the next revelation was waiting just around the corner. The first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, softening the tension that had gripped the house all night. I sat on the couch, exhausted, my parents and Lila close by, Marianne leaning against the wall with her arms crossed, eyes still sharp and alert. The danger from the past had retreated, for now, but the weight of everything we had uncovered still pressed down on me. My mind kept replaying the events of the night, the celebration dinner, the hidden corridors, the mysterious messages, and finally the confrontation that had revealed the truth about my family. I finally spoke, my voice hoarse. "So, all of it, the toast, the celebration, the relief, it wasn't about hating me?" My mother shook her head, tears in her eyes. "Never about hating you. It was the opposite. We feared for you, and the only way to keep you safe was to give you distance from the danger we couldn't control. The celebration was a release for us, not a rejection of you. I felt a knot in my chest begin to loosen. It was still hard to process, but finally the pieces were starting to fit. My parents hadn't been indifferent. They had been protecting me in ways I couldn't have understood as a child. Their relief had never been cruel. It had been love wrapped in fear and secrecy. Lila sat beside me, her expression calm now but tinged with sadness. "I know it's hard to accept," she said. "I lived part of that fear too. The person who threatened us, the danger from the past, it shaped both our childhoods. But surviving it means we get a second chance. We get to live our lives on our own terms now." I looked at her, and for the first time I felt a sense of connection. We were mirrors in many ways, but also survivors of the same hidden danger, separated by circumstances beyond our control. "So, you're saying we can move forward?" I asked. "Yes," she said gently. "We have to. We can't undo the past, but we can decide what our future looks like. And now, with the truth out, we can start making choices without fear." My father nodded. "Your mother and I made mistakes, yes. We kept secrets, we lied, we protected in ways that were hard for you to understand. But every choice we made was to keep you alive. Now that the danger has passed, we can finally be honest and rebuild trust." I could see the sincerity in his eyes, the weariness from years of fear and secrecy. I realized that the people I had misunderstood, my parents, had been carrying a burden far heavier than I had ever imagined. And while the past had been messy, painful, and full of shadows, it had shaped the people they were today, and the family we could still become. Marianne finally spoke, her usual calm tone softening. "The past is behind us. The danger is gone. What matters now is what you do with the knowledge you have. This is your life, and you get to decide how to live it." For the first time in days, I felt a sense of clarity. The fear that had haunted me, the unease, the secrets, the unknown, was still there, but it no longer felt insurmountable. I had answers even if some of them were difficult. I had context even if it was uncomfortable. And most importantly, I had the choice to move forward, to shape my own story. I glanced around at my family, at Marianne, at Lila, and a sense of gratitude washed over me. Despite the lies, the secrecy, and the fear, we had survived. We had made it through a night that could have ended in tragedy. And now, with the truth finally revealed, there was a possibility for healing, for connection, and for rebuilding the trust that had been strained for years. My mother reached out and took my hand. "We can't change the past," she said softly, "but we can promise honesty from now on. No more secrets, no more hidden dangers. Just family." I squeezed her hand back, feeling a mixture of relief and understanding. I understand now," I said. "And I forgive you. Not because everything was perfect, but because I finally see why it had to happen this way." My father nodded, a rare smile breaking across his face. "That's all we could ever hope for. To be forgiven, to be understood. And now we can start fresh." Lila smiled at me, a warmth in her eyes that made me feel like I finally belonged somewhere. "We all have scars from the past," she said. "But surviving together is what matters. We're not alone anymore." Marianne stepped back, surveying the room with a sense of quiet satisfaction. "This is the moment where the past stops controlling you. You know the truth, you know the danger has passed, and now you can live freely. Don't waste it." I took a deep breath, letting the tension drain from my body. The house that had felt like a labyrinth of secrets, fear, and danger now seemed quieter, calmer, almost safe. The storm had passed, and while the memory of it would linger, I realized that surviving it had made me stronger, wiser, and more aware of what mattered most: honesty, family, and trust. As we sat together in the early morning light, I reflected on everything that had happened. The celebration dinner that had haunted me, the cryptic messages from my aunt, Marianne's calm guidance, Lila's unexpected presence. They had all led to this moment of revelation. The past had been painful, yes, but it had also brought us here, to a place where we could finally understand one another. I knew the road ahead wouldn't be perfect. There would still be conversations to have, emotions to process, and relationships to rebuild. But for the first time I felt a sense of hope. The secrets that had divided us were no longer hidden, and with that knowledge we could begin to heal. I looked at my parents, their faces lined with worry and relief, and realized that love, even when complicated and wrapped in fear, had been the guiding force all along. They had made choices I didn't understand, yes, but those choices had been driven by the desire to protect, to survive, and to give me a chance at life. And as I glanced at Lila and Marianne, I understood something else too. Family wasn't just the people who gave you life. It was the people who survived with you, who stood by you in moments of fear, who shared in the truth once the danger had passed. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of peace. The tension that had consumed me, the questions that had haunted me, the fear of the unknown, they had all led to understanding, to connection, to a new beginning. I realized that while the past shaped us, it didn't have to define us. The celebration dinner, the hidden truths, the threats from long ago, they were all part of the story but not the whole story. The whole story was what we chose to do next. To rebuild, to trust, to live openly and honestly. As the sun rose higher, casting light across the living room, I felt the weight of the past lift just enough to breathe. The secrets had been revealed, the danger had passed, and the family I thought I had lost, or that I thought had rejected me, was finally whole again, in a way that was stronger, wiser, and more honest than ever before. And in that moment, I understood the truth that had been hidden for so long. Sometimes love looks messy, complicated, even frightening, but when it's real, it survives everything. It survives fear, it survives danger, it survives secrecy. And in the end, it gives you the chance to start again. I looked around the room, feeling gratitude, relief, and hope. The past had finally been faced. The secrets had been revealed. And though the memories of fear and uncertainty would remain, they would no longer control me. The story had reached its resolution, and yet it also marked a new beginning. A life where the truth was no longer something to fear, but something to embrace. And as I stood, taking a deep breath, I knew one final thing. I had survived, my family had survived, and together we could finally move forward, free from the shadows of the past, ready to live the story we were always meant to tell.